Good morning. Welcome to episode 96 of the Driller Newscast, a weekly update on the news and stories impacting the drilling and water industry. I'm your host, Brock Yordy.
And I'm your future host, Brielle Yordy.
And this week in the news, we're going to highlight the EPA and their workforce initiative to increase to 1,000 interns and find Gen Z and the youngest of the millennials to go to work for the EPA to protect the planet. Is that something you want to do, Brielle?
Yeah.
Next, again, the EPA, the HUD, and the DOE have asked utilities to give them data on water use and energy use on mixed family housing, and we're going to cover that. For our feature this week, we're going to go back to Nevada, where the Nevada Supreme Court ruled unanimously to give the state engineer authority to combine groundwater basins and surface water. And next, we'll jump to Arizona and the 100-year water rule. Brielle, do you think you'll be here in 100 years?
Yes.
That's exactly why we're doing these policies. That's the importance. For safety, it starts right here, and it's going to be a challenge. What are your standard operating procedures? How are we keeping our people safe? Because if you go to OSHA.gov right now, you can see the injuries that have come in the first 30 days, and it's very disappointing. Brielle, why should I operate safely?
So you can come home and not get hurt and protect yourself.
Perfect. So if you're not doing it for yourself, you should be doing it for your family, your children, your friends. Let's jump into the news. But this week in the news, let's talk about some positivity from the Environmental Protection Agency. Last week, they announced the launch of the B and EPA recruitment week and new recruitment video, a dynamic recruitment campaign designed to inspire and attract the next generation of environmental professionals. We all have workforce development and recruitment issues, and the EPA is taking a proactive approach. I suggest going over and taking a look at their video and their initiatives and seeing how we as an industry can replicate their goodwill. Here's their quote. EPA's mission is not just a responsibility. It is a sacred duty to our planet and future generations. In 2024, we're setting a new benchmark. Our aim is to bring on board more than 1,000 new employees, including 350 interns to tackle some of the most pressing environmental issues of our time. This comes from EPA Administrator Michael S. Reagan. He continues, from scientists to writers to program managers, we're hiring for roles that reflect our commitment to expanding and diversifying the environmental workforce. Be a great way if I'm a young groundwater professional, young drilling professional, maybe I got some college, I want to expand outside of my small town and my family, go intern for the EPA for a summer. Can open your eyes to a whole new universe. I'm going to continue with their quote. Today, I'm calling on the innovators, the visionaries, the change makers to join us in this crucial fight to protect people and the planet here at the EPA. The focus is on youth and diversity. EPA's plan includes a substantial increase in internship opportunities. Doubling our intern intake is just the beginning. We're looking for young, energetic minds to infuse new ideas and perspectives into our work. The agency continues to emphasize the recruitment of graduates from diverse backgrounds, including historically Black colleges and universities and other minority-serving institutions, to build a workforce reflective of America's diverse population. They have hiring webinars and recruitment drives, and there's a big webinar coming up on February 7th that is facilitated by Deputy Administrator Janet McCabe, designed to demystify the federal hiring process and highlight the array of career paths within the EPA. This is great. This is exactly what we need right now. And I love the idea of harnessing Gen Z and the youngest of the millennials and looking for that wonderful opportunity to get people thinking about environmental justice, climate action, sustainability, infrastructures. And one of their biggest pieces to the EPA right now is their ongoing projects under the federal infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act that include initiatives in greenhouse gas reduction, pollution control, renewable energy development. Go to EPA.gov and check this out and look at all that is possible with this and how we can get to go be part of the EPA, maybe for a summer, maybe professionally. But if we want to make a bigger impact, be represented appropriately, we have to demystify drilling and construction, pull the curtain back and go be part of the other team so that we can advocate appropriately. It's a great opportunity. Next, EPA is involved in this one as well. Leaders of the 3 federal agencies join forces to seek data that will facilitate green upgrades to the nation's housing stock. The leaders of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the U.S. Department of Energy announced a joint letter asking for the nation's leading utility companies to make energy and water use data freely available to owners of multifamily properties to eliminate barriers to energy efficiency improvements for families who live in multifamily assisted housing. It's very much goes back to our Justice 40 initiatives, underserved communities, 40% of that Inflation Reduction Act money being focused on building up these better properties. We see what's happening in Framingham and Eversource and that community, and this is a big deal. And this all comes under President Biden's leadership, where they're seeing a historic transition to clean energy across the entire economy. And that's our ground source geothermal. And I want to highlight this quote from, Michael S. Reagan again, which we just heard from. There's more work to be done, especially for communities that have been left behind for far too long. This joint effort will provide improved critical energy data, creating brighter, more efficient homes, and further reduce costs, ensuring we can build a sustainable future for all. This is invaluable, and we need to advocate and make sure our utilities are seeing this possibility. And, from the Department of Energy's home energy rebates, we can help American households save nearly $1 billion annually on their energy bills. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by making it easier to install upgrades like insulation, Energy Star appliances. And that's coming from Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. She states, "We are proud to join HUD and EPA to call for utility companies to provide accurate usage and data and maximize the ability for all households, including renters, to live in more comfortable, energy-efficient homes. Multifamily properties are home to more than 19 million low-income households. Over 15% of all U.S. households are low income. Let's talk to our utilities. Let's be part of this. Let's be part of the process. And of course, the help is out there. We need to be involved. Ground source geothermal heat pumps, all of the pieces. And this is going to lead right into our feature this week, where we're going to go to the state of Nevada, where their Supreme Court recognizes the importance of surface water and groundwater connections. Really excited about this feature this week because it's absolutely the opposite of what we saw 7 months ago in the United States Supreme Court. And it all started on January 25th. The Nevada Supreme Court ruled on whether the state engineer had the authority to determine the impact of groundwater withdrawal within a basin. The engineer had created the order 1309, where the state engineer determined that the water of 7 basins were interconnected in a manner such that withdrawals from one basin affected the amount of water in other basins. It's a big deal. This was an interesting case that started at the Lower Nevada Appellate Court in Las Vegas, where they ruled that the state engineer did not have the authority. We got to go back and talk about how this story started. This is groundwater. This is very important to us. And this is what the state engineer envisioned. They combined 6 basins to create one super basin titled as the Lower White River Flow System. And this started 40 years ago when Congress passed land deals to sell off Bureau of Land Management property north of Las Vegas to private developers who purchased the land. And just like many of the land development discussions we have in the Western US and the Colorado Compact, the developers needed to prove and seek out the amount of water that would sustain the development. So this happened in the 80s. Jump ahead to it's time to develop, 25 years ago, these developers determined they required 30,000 acre feet of water a year. As we've seen on the newscast, Nevada is a very smart groundwater state. And I'm now saying they're one of the best groundwater states we have, as we see the Nevada Supreme Court having a unanimous decision supporting the state's engineer determination that surface water and groundwater interconnected. This is the opposite of what we saw with the Sacketts versus the EPA and the US Supreme Court, where their unanimous ruling was that EPA could not prove that Sackett's property connected with Priest Lake, a waters of the United States. So I want us to step back for a moment and just think about Sackett versus the EPA case. Started with the Sacketts buying their property in 2007, and then the EPA stepping in and them suing them in 2008. And it took 15 years to May 2023 to hit the Supreme Court and have the discussion and a major impact to the waters of the United States. And I know we talk about property rights and owner rights, and we covered a Clean Water Act violation last week. So 15 years. Think about the life cycle of what it takes for science to prove right or wrong and then go through the court case and become policy. The Coyote Spring Valley case, which is what we're talking about with this Nevada Supreme Court, took 22 years, with the ultimate decision being pushed back down to the lower courts and will still be active. And that's something we need to think about as they pushed it back down and had the discussion. Drillers, the EPA is only 52 years old, and the Clean Water Act is just over 50 years old. We just had a major discussion and overhaul about the waters of the United States. The impact to water, the environment, life and organisms, civilization takes research, science, debate, and ultimately a yes or no decision. In 2023, we saw hundreds of $1 million settlements for forever chemicals and PFAS to $10 billion settlements from the impact of PFAS. Why am I talking PFAS or we're talking groundwater? Because the first alert of the risk of PFAS was in 1998 to the EPA. Heck, Robert Bilott filed his first suit the summer of 1999. That class action suit that Bilott filed against DuPont for Parkersburg residents in 2001 didn't settle until 2017. We just saw last summer DuPont to 3M from $1 billion settlement to tens of billions of dollars. It's important to consider the timeline and reaction to the impacts of our environment directly correlating to the sustainable life. It's never been a quick judgment. Even as we look at the Department of the Interior and they discuss water impacts of the Colorado River, and then we saw those atmospheric rivers come through last year, and now we just saw last week with the Pineapple Express storms coming through and all the water being released, the money in California to have stormwater capture, ASR wells, all the things we talk about. Weather is changing and impacting us. And as we look at 50-year policies to 100-year policies, how do we get there? And so if we look at this Nevada case, which is insanely fascinating, the state engineer issued Order 1169 in 2002, requiring all pending applications in the 6 basins to be evaluated. State engineer's opinion was that groundwater in the various basins originated from the same carbonate rock aquifer system, and that pumping groundwater from one basin might reduce the flow of water to other basins, including to the springs supplying the fully appropriated Muddy River, which is Las Vegas water. He indicated that it was unclear how much additional groundwater could be appropriated without causing adverse effects throughout these 6 basins that he made into a super basin. So he did what we all do as we look at production wells and we look at the impact. He ordered to determine the effects of additional pumping. The state engineer ordered water rights holders in Coyote Springs Valley to conduct a pump test to obtain further information by stressing the aquifer. During the pump test, the water rights holders in Coyote Springs Valley pumped at least 50% of their permitted water rights over a period of 2 years. And we saw negative impacts interconnected from surface water to groundwater. We jump ahead a couple more years to 2006, and the science comes out that a federally protected fish would be impacted. This is in the endangered species list, the Moapa dace fish. So in 2012, the decision that the increased pumping results in unprecedented decrease in water flow to the highest elevation springs, which were fed by the carbonate rock aquifer system. So they slowed down what this development was going to look at, because it was understood not only was available access to water important for a community, but this water withdrawal impacted an endangered species. And then from 2012, we jumped 10 years to right now with this order 1309, the Lower White River Flow System, consisting of Cane Springs Valley, Coyote Spring Valley, Mud River Spring area, California Washington Valley, Garnet Valley, and northwest portions of the Black Mountains area as described. So this is a big deal as we think about how they established a single hydrographic basin, now called the White River Flow System. And this order goes on to state that the maximum quantity of groundwater that may be pumped from the basin without causing further declines in the Warm Springs area spring flow and the flow in the Mud River cannot exceed 8,000 acre feet. This is impacting the Colorado River. This is impacting an endangered species. What did it take us? It took us 25 years to get here. And you know, why do we talk so much about the water crisis happening in the Western United States? Because it's not only there, it's the Ogallala. It's look at what's happening in Kansas. Look what's happening in Missouri. Look at the impacts on the Mississippi. We have to understand the impacts of groundwater and surface water connections. And just last week, we discussed that Arizona, California, Utah, Texas, New Mexico, Nevada were all on the list of declining aquifers. So this is another example of development wanting to bring in 250,000 people into the desert that will not only impact groundwater, but will impact the Colorado River, endangered species, the livelihood of being environmentally responsible stewards. So as we look at that and we think of the timeline, I remember this great story as I was working out west and starting to understand these big drilling companies drilling for groundwater and the Colorado Compact. And I learned about in 1973, so 51 years ago, Arizona passed the law requiring adequate water supplies on land sold. Why? Because we had some shifty land deals going on. And that definition of adequate water meant continuously available water for 100 years. This law was created after multiple bad real estate deals where purchasers acquired land in the 60s and 70s with inadequate water supplies. So, this is why the science is important and why the Department of the Interior wants continued studies, why we're mapping aquifers, why we're looking at groundwater depletion, why we're looking at the availability of aquifer storage and recharge, desalinization. We're putting billions of dollars into water infrastructure right now, stormwater capture. It's because we don't know what we don't know. However, there are a lot of great individuals who do know, and their job is to map groundwater and surface water and the impacts that humanity has on those supplies. To that point, 50 years after Arizona passed that law, last winter, Arizona Senator Peterson challenged the validity of the 100-year water supply law. And I want you to think about the last 2 decades of drought, the limited snowpack that we had in the Sierras this year that California was talking about until these Pineapple Expresses came in. However, snowpack melts over time and doesn't inundate us to a level that we have to release all floodgates and let it go. And so as we look at this impact, and we saw this attack on the validity of the 100-year water law in Arizona, Governor Hobbs stepped in and slowed down new home builds because of the Phoenix Metroplex and looking at how much water, the reduction of water that has to come out of the Colorado Compact. What do we have for groundwater reserves? We saw the well permits pulled from the alfalfa farms. With that said, the validity of 100-year, there's still 80,000 unbuilt lots right now in the Phoenix Metroplex. I want you to consider that. I want you to think about how we talk about an acre foot of water to a million acre foot of water. In many studies, a home consumes 300 gallons of water a day. So we describe an acre feet on the newscast all too often as 326,000 gallons. The true math is it's 325,851 gallons. Or more importantly, that is the consumption of water. Really, it's about 328,000 gallons a year of 3 households. So, how long will it take Phoenix to build 80,000 lots? How many years? When all of those homes are completed, that's an additional 26,883 acre feet of water a year for those homes. Sure, the debate can be that the more homes we build, the less agriculture we have, the less industry, who are our greatest consumptors. But we need to think about what is our impact, and that it takes 25 years to come to a conclusion if we can build developments or not, through the courts, through the discussions, through the science, through the policy making. And it's funny because in the news, we talked about the EPA and the HUD and the Department of Energy requesting better data from utilities to understand energy efficiency and water consumption, which are tied 100% from, as we look at chillers, to the amount of water, to being a more environmentally sustainable home. So let's think back 50 years. Did we have data storage the way we have today? Did we have the consumption? Did we have 330 million Americans in this country? The 3 biggest House seat states being the 3 biggest water stress states. So should we have 100 years? Should we have a 150-year policy? California has a 25. So groundwater and surface water are connected. The waters of the United States is as important as anything else to everything we're doing today. As water well professionals, drilling professionals, we must understand how we advocate, educate, and prevent impact to our environment. I want you to think about that. Thank you for joining us for episode 96 of the Driller Newscast. There's a lot that goes into policy, and we saw that from the EPA being 52 years old to how long it took to sort out Nevada's latest ruling that is still up in the air. What else should we be thinking about right now, Brielle?
That you should check out the driller.com.
That is a great suggestion. Like and subscribe, sign up for our weekly news. Go out, be safe, be smart, and understand why we're doing what we do every day, professionals. Thank you.